The desert wind sighs across endless sands. But here, by the banks of the Nile, the air is still and warm. Ancient stones hold the silence of thousands of years, protecting you from the passing of time. Tonight, the eternal calm of Egypt is your sanctuary. Welcome to Sleep Geography, where the world becomes a soft place to rest your thoughts. Tonight, I'm so glad you found your way here. Before we begin our journey, take a moment to settle in. Perhaps you're already lying down, or maybe you're finding that perfect position now. Pull the covers up if you need to. Let your shoulders drop. Let everything soften. I wonder where in the world you're listening from tonight. Perhaps you're in a city where lights still glow beyond your window, or maybe you're somewhere quiet where darkness has already gathered. Wherever you are, you're safe, you're comfortable, and you're about to drift somewhere beautiful. Tonight, we're travelling to a land where time moves differently. A place where a narrow green river winds through endless seas of sand. Where the light turns everything to gold, then amber, then the softest blue. Where ancient stones hold the warmth of 5,000 years of sun. Where the air itself feels like history, dry and clean, and infinitely patient. This is a journey through Egypt, but not as you might expect it. No crowds, no rush. Just the eternal conversation between river and desert, between green-growing things and patient stone. If these journeys help you find sleep, consider subscribing. New destinations await every week. Now close your eyes if you haven't already. Let's begin. You're floating high above the earth, where the air is thin and clear and absolutely still. Below you, the whole of Egypt spreads like an ancient map drawn in sand and water and stone. The late afternoon sun angles across this vast land, turning everything it touches into something precious. Gold and copper and bronze. The light has weight here, substance it pools in valleys and flows across plateaus like honey. From this height the Nile reveals itself as the miracle it has always been. A single dark ribbon of water catching the light in places where it curves, throwing back glints of silver and gold. It moves through the landscape with such patience, such purpose. Along its edges, clinging to the water like a prayer, runs a narrow band of the deepest green palm fronds and cultivation. Fields that have been tended for millennia. This green is so vivid against the surrounding desert that it seems almost unreal, like someone has painted it there with the finest brush. You drift lower, and the details begin to emerge. The river's path is never straight. It meanders with an ancient wisdom, taking its time, creating crescents and curves that will shift over centuries. In some places, the green valley is barely a mile wide. The desert presses close on both sides, patient and eternal, waiting. In other places, the cultivation spreads wider, farmers having coaxed life from every inch of soil the river's floods have blessed. To the north, you can see where the river begins to spread its fingers. The delta opens like a fan, like an offering to the Mediterranean. Here the green deepens and spreads. Channels branch and branch again, creating a maze of waterways. Each one carries its portion of the river's gift to the sea. The light on the delta is different, softer. There's moisture in the air here, the faintest haze that turns the sunset into watercolour. Peach and rose and the palest purple. The Mediterranean beyond is a sheet of hammered silver, so calm it barely seems to breathe. You turn your gaze south, following the river upstream. The Nile moves through valleys carved between ancient hills. These aren't mountains in the dramatic sense. They're old, worn, patient rises of limestone and sandstone. Time has softened their edges. Wind has carved them into flowing forms. They glow now in the evening light, warm as bread from an oven. The western desert stretches beyond sight, an ocean of sand and rock that makes you understand infinity. The dunes here move in long, graceful ranks. They're golden in the direct light, but in their lee sides, in the hollows between them, the shadows are the coolest blue, like pools of evening gathering in the low places. These dunes have a rhythm to them, a pattern that speaks of prevailing winds and patient accumulation. Some are crescents, their horns pointing downwind. Others are long linear ridges, parallel as waves on a vast sea. The sand itself is finer than powder, each grain polished by millennia of movement between the seas of sand-raised plateaus of pale limestone. These are different creatures entirely, flat-topped, severe, carved by wind into formations that seem architectural, natural pyramids and towers. Mushroom rocks balanced on stems too thin to seem possible. The limestone is almost white in places, cream and pearl and bone. The plateaus are scored by wadis, dry riverbeds that may not have seen water in years, decades, perhaps centuries. But they remember water. Their paths are carved deep, winding through the rock like ancient writing. In some places, you can see the different layers of stone, each one a chapter in the Earth's long story, cream and yellow and orange and red, stacked like the pages of a book. You drift east now, toward the Red Sea. The character of the land changes. The limestone gives way to harder stuff, granite and volcanic rock. The colours deepen, red and purple and brown, so dark it's almost black. These are the mountains of the eastern desert, and they're older than the limestone, older than the sand. They remember when the earth was young, the Red Sea appears like a miracle of colour. From this height you can see the coral shelves that fringe the shore. The water changes from the deepest cobalt in the depths to the clearest turquoise over the reefs, azure and sapphire, and every shade of blue that has ever existed. The water is so clear that you can see the shadow of clouds moving across the sandy bottom. In the shallow places beyond the sea, the Sinai Peninsula rises. Mountains of copper and rose, bare and beautiful in their severity. They catch the light differently than the limestone plateaus. They hold it, warm it, throw it back transformed. These are mountains that have seen Moses, mountains that have watched the world change around them, while they remained constant. The air up here has a quality you've never experienced before. It's dry, so dry that it seems to pull moisture from your lungs, but gently, not harshly. There's a mineral scent to it, like heated stone, like ancient dust. But there's sweetness too. The faintest hint of date palms, of cultivation, of green things growing against all odds. As you watch, a wind moves across the desert. You can see it in the way the sand lifts in veils, translucent curtains of gold that drift and settle. The wind has carved the rocks into forms that seem impossible. Arches and pillars and balanced rocks that look like they should tumble, but have stood for millennia. You notice the oases now, scattered through the western desert like green jewels dropped on a carpet of gold. They're small from this height, some no bigger than a single grove of palms around a pool of water. Others are larger, supporting villages, cultivation, life carved out of the desert's patience. Each oasis is a miracle. Springs that have bubbled up from deep aquifers, water that fell as rain perhaps thousands of years ago, finally finding its way to the surface. The palms cluster around these springs like worshippers around a shrine. Their fronds whisper in the evening breeze, a sound like gentle rain, like whispered prayers to the south. Far beyond the traditional borders of ancient Egypt, you can see where the Nile spreads into a vast lake. This is Lake Nasser, a modern creation, but it lies in the landscape like it has always been there. The water is an impossible blue, glacier blue in the desert, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it's hard to tell where water ends and air begins. The lake's edges are intricately carved, following the contours of the flooded valleys. Small islands dot its surface, the tops of what were once hills. The water is absolutely still, mirror calm, holding the reflection of the evening sky like a memory. The sun is lower now. The light has shifted from gold to something deeper, amber and honey and the warmest orange. The shadows are longer, bluer, cooler. They pour into the valleys like dark water, pooling in the low places, climbing the eastern faces of the dunes. This is the magic hour in Egypt, when the harshness of the day softens into something infinitely gentle. The rocks that were too hot to touch an hour ago are now warm as a cat in your lap. The sand that blazed like fire now glows like embers, comfortable, welcoming. You can see how the ancient Egyptians would have watched this same transformation every evening, how they would have seen the sunboat of Ra descending into the western desert, beginning its journey through the underworld. The mythology makes perfect sense when you see it from here. The sun does seem to sink into the sand, to be swallowed by the desert, only to be reborn each morning in the east. The colours deepen moment by moment. Rose gold becomes copper, becomes bronze. The limestone cliffs that were white as bone are now painted in shades of apricot and peach. The Nile itself has darkened to the colour of strong coffee, still catching light in places, still moving with its ancient purpose. Birds are returning to their roosts along the river, ibises and herons, their white bodies turned gold by the light. They move in long lines, following the river's path, their wings catching the last of the sun. Their calls drift up to you, faint and distant like memories of sound. The temperature is dropping, but slowly, gently. The heat that rose from the sand in shimmering waves all day is dissipating into the clear air. Soon the desert will be cool, even cold, but for now it's perfect, warm and dry and comfortable as a blanket. You notice details you missed before. The way certain rocks have been polished by wind until they shine like glass. The patterns in the sand that look like frozen waves, like music made visible. The way the green of the Nile Valley isn't uniform but contains 1,000 shades. Dark green of date palms, bright green of young wheat, silver green of olive trees, blue green of acacias. There are ruins visible from this height. Not the great monuments you might expect, but smaller things. Mud brick walls melting back into the earth. They came from stone foundations of buildings whose purposes are lost to time. They're everywhere once you start looking. Egypt is a palimpsest, each age written over the last, but never quite erasing what came before. The western desert holds secrets. You can see the traces of ancient lakes, their beds now white with salt and minerals. These lakes existed when the Sahara was green, when hippos wallowed where now only sand exists. The traces are still there, written in the rocks, in the patterns of erosion, in the fossil shells that lie scattered on plateaus 1,000 miles from any sea. The light continues its transformation. The amber deepens to rust, to burgundy, to the deep purple of wine. The sky above is performing its own slow miracle. Blue becomes lavender, becomes violet, becomes the first suggestion of night. Stars are beginning to appear, faint at first, then brighter. The desert sky is so clear, so free of moisture and pollution, that the stars seem close enough to touch. They don't twinkle here. They burn steady and bright like candles in windows. You realise that you're seeing Egypt as the ancients saw it. The same river, the same desert, the same eternal cycle of flood and drought, day and night, life and death and life again. The modern world falls away up here. Time becomes fluid, meaningless. You could be floating above the Egypt of the pharaohs or the Egypt of the future. It's all the same. The river flows, the desert waits, the sun sets and rises. The Sinai mountains are purple shadows now, geometric shapes against the dying light. The Red Sea has darkened to the colour of wine, still holding light in its depths, still breathing with tides that connect it to all the oceans of the world. You drift lower, close to the earth, feeling the warmth that still radiates from the sand and stone. The air is perfumed with the desert's evening breath, dry grass and heated rock, and that indefinable scent of great age, of time itself made manifest in stone and sand. The Nile Valley is entering its evening rhythm. You can sense more than see the activities below. Farmers returning from fields, animals being led to shelter, cooking fires being lit. The same activities that have marked evening here for 5,000 years, 10,000 years, since humans first learned to read the river's moods and plant according to its floods. The green ribbon of cultivation looks even more miraculous in this light. A defiant strip of life in a landscape that seems hostile to life. But that's not quite right. The desert isn't hostile. It's simply itself, honest in its dryness, patient in its waiting, and when water comes it blooms. Desert flowers that wait years for rain, then carpet the sand in colour for a few brief days. The oases are lighting their lamps now, small points of warm light in the vast darkness of the desert, each one a small world, complete in itself. Palm wine and dates, stories told around fires, the same stories perhaps that have been told for generations uncounted. You can feel the age of this place in your bones. Not old in the way ruins are old, but old in the way the earth is old. These rocks remember when the Mediterranean was a desert, when the Sahara was a sea, when the continents themselves were arranged differently. Human history is just the latest chapter in a story that has been telling itself for millions of years. The moon is rising now, a crescent bright as silver, casting its own light across the landscape. The sand glows faintly in the moonlight, ghostly and beautiful. The Nile becomes a ribbon of molten silver, still moving, always moving, carrying its burden of silt and history toward the sea. This is Egypt in its evening dress, calm and eternal and infinitely patient, the heat of the day forgiven, the cool of night welcomed. The stars wheel overhead in patterns the ancient astronomers mapped and named, the same stars that looked down on the building of the pyramids, on Cleopatra's barge, on the armies of Alexander. You float here in the gathering darkness, held between earth and sky, between day and night, between history and eternity. The land below is settling into sleep, into the quiet hours when the desert truly comes alive, when foxes hunt and owls call, and the sand cools enough for 1,000 small creatures to emerge. The transformation is complete now. Day has become night with the grace of a dancer, the patience of a priest. The land that blazed gold now rests in silver and shadow. The Nile flows on, unmarked by the change, constant as time itself. This is Egypt. Not the Egypt of monuments and museums, but the eternal Egypt, the Egypt of sand and river, of patient stone and impossible green, the Egypt that exists beyond human time, that was here before us and will be hereafter. You drift in this timeless space, feeling the ancient rhythm of the place seep into your bones, the slowness of it, the patience, the way everything here moves to a clock that measures not hours but centuries, not days but ages. The peace of it settles over you like a blanket, warm and comforting and older than memory. You begin to descend now, drawn earthward by curiosity and the pull of ancient ground. The landscape that was a map beneath you becomes something more intimate, more real. Details emerge from shadow and light like secrets whispered in the evening air. The Nile floodplain draws you first, that narrow miracle of green that has sustained civilization since humans first learned to read the river's moods. From this closer vantage, you see how the cultivation isn't uniform but rather a patchwork of fields, each one a different shade depending on what grows there and when it was last watered. Some fields are the bright emerald of young wheat, others show the deeper green of mature sugarcane. Still others lie fallow, their earth dark and rich, waiting for the next planting. The boundaries between fields are marked by narrow raised paths, pale embankments of dried mud that serve as walkways and water barriers both. They create a network across the floodplain, geometric patterns softened by age and use. Palm trees line many of these paths, their trunks leaning at comfortable angles, their fronds creating corridors of shade. Water is everywhere here, though not always visible. Narrow canals branch from the main river, some no wider than a footpath carrying the Nile's gift deep into the cultivation. These canals move so slowly they seem still, their surfaces perfect mirrors for the evening sky. Occasionally, a waterbird disturbs the surface, sending ripples that catch the last light like scattered coins. There are backwaters here, quiet pools where the river has forgotten to flow. They're edged with papyrus and reeds, the same plants the ancients used to make paper. The reeds whisper against each other in the evening breeze, a sound like gentle rain, like whispered prayers. These backwaters hold a different quality of light, green-tinted from the reflection of vegetation, mysterious in their stillness. The levees that contain the river are ancient constructions, rebuilt and reinforced countless times over millennia. They're made of the same mud that makes the fields fertile, packed and dried until it's almost as hard as stone. Acacias grow along their tops, twisted trees with thorns like needles and tiny leaves that filter the light into lace patterns. You move north, following the river as it begins its transformation into the delta. Here the character of the land changes completely. The narrow valley opens like a door into a different world. The river splits and splits again, creating a maze of waterways that would be impossible to map because they change with every flood, every season. The delta is flat in a way that makes you understand the word. There's no drama here, no sudden rises or falls, just the gentle gradient from river to sea, so gradual you can barely perceive it. The horizon seems impossibly distant, a straight line where green meets sky. Reed beds dominate the northern reaches. They stretch for miles, a sea of green-gold stalks that move in waves when the wind passes over them. These aren't the delicate reeds of the backwaters, but robust plants, some twice the height of a person. They create their own world, dense and secretive, filled with the sounds of waterbirds and insects. Between the reed beds lie lagoons, bodies of water too large to be called ponds, too small to be lakes. They're shallow, most no deeper than waist-high, their bottoms visible through water so clear it seems like air. The water here has a different quality than the river proper. It's lighter, brighter, tinged with salt where the Mediterranean's influence creeps inland. The lagoons grade imperceptibly into the sea. There's no clear boundary, just a gradual transition from fresh to brackish to salt. Mangroves appear in these transition zones, their aerial roots creating architecture in the water, complex structures that trap sediment and build land grain by grain. The light on the delta water is extraordinary. Even now, as full darkness approaches, the water holds luminescence. It glows faintly, as if lit from within. Every small wave, every ripple, catches and holds light for a moment before passing it on. You turn west, drawn by the vastness of the desert. The Western Desert is an ocean of sand and stone that makes you reconsider what you thought you knew about emptiness. It's not empty at all. It's full of form and colour and texture, full of the kind of beauty that comes from simplicity taken to its extreme. The dune seas roll out in perfect order. These aren't random piles of sand, but organised structures, shaped by winds that have blown in the same patterns for millennia. The major dune ridges run parallel, separated by corridors of harder ground where the sand has been blown away to reveal the bedrock beneath. Each dune is a study in curves. The windward side rises at a gentle angle, sand grains creeping up the slope in an endless procession. The lee side drops sharply, the angle of repose, where sand tumbles down in small avalanches that whisper like silk. The sand itself is finer than flour, each grain polished smooth by endless movement. In the dying light, it glows amber and gold, but in the shadows between dunes it turns the coolest blue, as if pieces of evening sky have pooled in the low places. Along the crests of the dunes the wind lifts veils of sand, translucent curtains that drift and dissipate. These sand plumes catch the light in extraordinary ways, becoming sheets of gold leaf floating in the air. The patterns in the sand are infinite. Ripples within ripples, each scale telling the story of different wind speeds, different times. Rising from the sand seas are the plateaus, massive tables of limestone and sandstone that the wind hasn't been able to move. These are different creatures entirely from the soft dunes. They're architectural, geometric, carved by wind into forms that seem designed rather than natural. The plateaus show their history in layers. Each stratum is a different shade, a different texture, marking different epochs when this desert was a sea, a swamp, a different desert. The layers are so clear you can read them like tree rings. Cream-coloured limestone from an ancient ocean, red sandstone from a time of rivers, yellow marl from a period of lakes. Wadis cut through these plateaus, dry riverbeds that remember water. They wind through the rock in sinuous patterns, their paths determined by weaknesses in the stone that might be invisible to the eye, but which water found millions of years ago. The wadi floors are corridors of different life. Acacia trees grow here. their roots reaching deep to find moisture that hasn't been surface water in living memory. The escarpments where the plateaus meet the desert floor are dramatic walls of rock, sometimes hundreds of feet high. They're carved into fantastic shapes, pillars and arches and balanced rocks that seem to defy gravity. The wind has found every weakness in the stone and exploited it, creating sculpture that no human artist could imagine. Scattered across the plateau surfaces are fields of desert pavement, areas where the wind has blown away all the fine material, leaving only pebbles and rocks. These create natural mosaics, patterns of different coloured stones fitted together like intentional art. Black volcanic rocks mixed with white quartz and red jasper, all varnished by the desert until they shine. You drift east toward the Red Sea, where the character of the desert changes again. Here the rocks are older, harder. This is the basement of Egypt, the ancient core that everything else was built upon. Granite and gneiss and volcanic rocks that remember when the earth was young. The colours are deeper here. Not the pale creams and yellows of the limestone, but deep reds and purples and blacks. Near Aswan, the granite creates its own landscape. Massive rounded boulders balanced on top of each other, looking like giant's marbles abandoned in play. The granite is polished smooth in places, rough and crystalline in others. When you look closely, you can see the individual crystals that make up the rock. Clear quartz, pink feldspar, black mica, all locked together in patterns that speak of slow cooling deep underground. The wadis here are different from those in the limestone country. They're narrower, their walls steeper. They carry the memory of flash floods, sudden violent waters that carved deep channels in hours, then disappeared for years. The wadi floors are filled with pale gravels, granite worn down to rounded pebbles, sorted by water into sizes. The largest boulders upstream, then cobbles, then pebbles, then sand, each flood reorganizing the pattern. Broad alluvial fans spread from the mouths of these wadis, triangular aprons of debris that spread across the desert floor. From above they look like river deltas, but instead of water carrying sediment to the sea, these are floods carrying mountain debris to the desert. Between the mountain masses and the sea lies a coastal plain, not wide but significant. It's scattered with isolated hills, inselbergs, islands of rock rising from the flatness. Each one is a different shape, carved by wind and rare rain into unique forms. You find yourself drawn to the oases, those impossible gardens in the wilderness. Siwa lies far to the west, almost at the Libyan border, a depression in the desert floor where springs bubble up from deep aquifers. The oasis is larger than you expected, not just a cluster of palms around a pool, but a whole landscape of cultivation and life. Date palms dominate, thousands of them, their fronds creating a canopy that filters the light into something green and cool. Beneath them grow olive trees, gnarled and ancient, some perhaps 1,000 years old. The olives here are different from those grown near the sea, concentrated by the desert into intense flavour. The springs that feed Siwa are warm, heated by their journey through deep rocks. They bubble up in pools edged with deposits of minerals, white rims of salt and calcite that build up year by year. The water is so clear you can see every pebble on the bottom, every strand of algae waving in the gentle current. Salt is everywhere in Siwa. Salt lakes that shine white as snow in the sunlight. Salt crusts that crack into polygonal patterns like natural tile. Even the soil is salty in places, supporting only the hardiest plants, those that have learned to drink brine and thrive. Bahariya, close to the Nile Valley, has a different character. It sits in a depression surrounded by black hills, volcanic rocks that make the oasis seem even greener by contrast. The springs here are numerous, each one feeding its own grove of palms, its own small area of cultivation. The shade in the oases is different from any other shade. It's not just cooler, but moister, alive with the sound of water and wind in fronds. The date palms create layers of shade, each frond filtering the light until what reaches the ground is soft and green and constantly moving. You continue east to the Red Sea, where the desert meets the water in a collision of colours. The continental shelf here is a wonder of graduated blues. In the depths, the water is the darkest indigo, almost black. As it shallows towards shore, it transforms through every possible shade of blue. Cobalt becomes sapphire, becomes azure, becomes turquoise, becomes the palest aquamarine in the shallows. The coral reefs are visible through the clear water, dark patches that indicate complex underwater architecture. Even from above, you can see the texture of the coral formations, the brain corals and staghorn corals and table corals, each one a different shade of brown or purple or green. In the very shallow water, over sand, the water is so clear it seems not to exist at all. You can see the ripple patterns on the sandy bottom, the shadows of clouds passing over, the occasional dark shape of a ray gliding across the seafloor. Mangroves fringe some of the calmer inlets, their aerial roots creating mazes in the tidal zones. These mangroves are different from those in the delta, adapted to full salt water rather than brackish. Their leaves are thicker, waxier, designed to exclude salt or excrete it through special glands. The beach itself is a narrow ribbon of coral sand, blindingly white in sunlight, soft pink in the evening light. Behind the beach, the desert comes right to the water's edge in most places. Mountains of red and purple rock dropping straight into blue water, no transition, no gradation, just the stark meeting of opposites. You turn inland again, drawn to a different kind of water. The Fayoum is an oasis, but not like the others. It's fed not by springs but by a canal from the Nile, an ancient channel that brings river water into a natural depression. At its heart lies Birket Karun, Lake Karun, a body of water that seems misplaced in the desert. The lake is wide and shallow, its surface ruffled by wind into millions of tiny waves that catch the light like scales. The water is brackish, saltier than the Nile, but not as salty as the sea. It supports its own unique ecology, fish that exist nowhere else, adapted to this particular mixture of salt and fresh. The shorelines are pale, almost white in places, marked by different levels where the lake has risen and fallen over the centuries. These old shorelines create natural terraces, steps leading down to the current water level. Each terrace supports different plants, creating bands of colour: silver-grey saltbush, green tamarisk, yellow flowering acacias. Beyond the lake, the land rises in flat-topped hills, mesas of yellow and tan stone that glow in the evening light. These hills are carved into badlands in places, erosion creating miniature canyon systems, mazes of gullies and ridges that would be easy to lose yourself in. Throughout the western desert you encounter sabkhars, salt flats that mark where ancient lakes once lay. These are among the flattest places on Earth, so level that you can see the curvature of the planet. After rare rains, they become shallow lakes, perfect mirrors for the sky. But most of the time they're dry, their surfaces cracked into polygonal patterns that repeat endlessly. The salt crust shines with a dull gleam, not quite white, tinted pink or yellow by minerals and algae. In some places the crust is thin, and beneath it lies mud, black and sticky and smelling of sulphur. In other places the salt has crystallized into formations like frozen flowers, delicate structures that crumble at a touch. Walking on a sabkhar is like walking on another planet. The crunch of salt beneath feet, the endless flatness, the way the horizon shimmers in the heat. These are places outside normal geography, spaces that seem to exist in their own dimension. As you observe all these landscapes, you realize how they're connected. The river feeds the delta and the Fayoum. The eastern desert mountains provide the minerals that color the rocks and sand. The wind connects everything, carrying sand from the Sahara to the Nile Valley, carrying moisture from the Mediterranean inland, carrying seeds and spores that allow life to jump from oasis to oasis. The colours of Egypt aren't what you expected. Not just gold and brown, but a whole spectrum. The green of cultivation, from emerald to olive to sage. The blues of water, from indigo to turquoise to the palest sky. The reds and purples of ancient rocks, the white of salt and limestone, the black of volcanic stone and fertile mud. The textures too are infinitely varied. smooth water-polished pebbles and rough volcanic rocks, fine sand and coarse gravel, soft mud and hard salt crust. Each texture tells a story of how it was formed, what forces shaped it, how long it has existed. Even the air has geography here. In the valleys it pools and flows like a slow river. Over the plateaus it moves in steady currents. In the dunes it eddies and swirls, creating the patterns in the sand. Near water, it carries moisture and the scent of growth. In the deep desert, it's so dry it seems to pull moisture from your skin, your breath. The sounds of the landscape are subtle but present. The whisper of sand moving over sand, the rustle of palm fronds, the lap of water against shore, the crack of rocks expanding and contracting with temperature change, the call of birds settling for the night. Each sound belongs to its place, creates its place. You notice how life has adapted to each niche. The plants that grow in salt, the trees that survive on morning dew alone, the fish that live in water that would kill most aquatic life, the insects that navigate by the stars across seemingly featureless sand. Each organism is perfectly suited to its particular corner of this vast and varied land. The ancient Egyptians knew this geography intimately. They had different names for different types of desert, different words for various qualities of soil. They knew where to find specific stones for building, specific plants for medicine, specific minerals for paint. The landscape was their library, their pharmacy, their art supply store. Modern Egypt is written lightly on this ancient geography. Roads follow routes that animals found first, that traders followed for millennia. Cities grow where water is reliable. Agriculture spreads where soil permits. The ancient patterns persist beneath the modern overlay. As night fully arrives, the geography doesn't disappear but transforms. The rocks that blazed in sunlight now radiate stored heat. The sand that was too hot to touch becomes cool, almost cold. The water that sparkled now holds stars. The landscape enters its night mode, a different but equally real existence. Certain features become more prominent in darkness. White limestone cliffs glow faintly in moonlight. Salt flats shine like snow. Water becomes a perfect mirror for the stars. The geography of night is simpler in some ways, more mysterious in others. You realise this landscape doesn't need drama to be magnificent. Its power comes from patience, from the accumulated effect of time. Every grain of sand has a history. Every rock has travelled. Every drop of water has cycled through clouds and rain and river and sea countless times. The Nile continues its patient flow, carrying Ethiopia's soil to Egypt's fields and the Mediterranean's floor. The wind continues its sculpture of rock and distribution of sand. The sun continues its daily journey, painting the landscape in different colours with each passing hour. This is a geography of endurance, of adaptation, of finding beauty and simplicity and strength in seeming emptiness. It's a landscape that teaches patience, that rewards careful observation, that reveals its secrets slowly to those who take the time to look. The physical geography of Egypt is both harsh and generous, monotonous and varied, ancient and ever-changing. It's a paradox resolved by understanding that these aren't opposites but complementary truths. The desert is harsh but breeds the appreciation for water that makes the Nile sacred. The landscape seems monotonous until you learn to see its infinite variations. It's ancient but renewed daily by wind and rarely by water. You float here in the darkness, surrounded by the solid reality of rocks and sand and water, feeling how they create the stage on which all of Egypt's history has played out. This geography isn't just the setting for civilization, it's a character in the story, shaping everything that has happened here and everything that will happen. The land sleeps now, but it's not passive. The wind still moves sand grain by grain. Water still flows toward its level. Rocks still crack and weather and slowly turn to soil. The geography continues its slow work, patient as only stones can be patient, enduring as only deserts can endure. In this sleeping landscape, among the patient stones and eternal sand, humans have left their own quiet marks. Not scars, but inscriptions. Not damage, but dialogue with the land that has sustained them for millennia. You find yourself drawn to these places where human hands have worked with what the earth provides, creating beauty from mud and stone, meaning from minerals and light. You drift toward Luxor, where the great temples rise from the east bank of the Nile like thoughts made solid. In the pre-dawn darkness, the temple of Karnak is a different place than it will be in the harsh light of noon. You enter the great hyper-style hall, that forest of stone columns that has stood here for 3,000 years. The columns rise around you like ancient trees, their surfaces carved with hieroglyphs that are both art and language, both decoration and prayer. The darkness here is not complete. Stars are visible through the gaps where the roof has fallen, and their light filters down in the faintest silver threads. As your eyes adjust, you begin to see the details that daylight often overwhelms. The columns are not uniform. Each one tells its own story through the cartouches of different pharaohs, the styles of different periods, the hands of different artists. Some capitals are closed papyrus buds, massive stone flowers waiting eternally to bloom. Others are open papyrus umbels, spreading their stone petals to support massive architraves. Still others show lotus flowers, that symbol of rebirth that appears everywhere in Egyptian art. You run your fingers along the carved reliefs, feeling the precision of the work. These aren't deep carvings, but shallow reliefs, raised just enough to catch light and shadow. The ancient artists understood that in this climate, in this light, subtlety would last longer than drama. Deep carvings would trap sand, would erode faster. These shallow reliefs have survived 3 millennia and might survive 3 more. Traces of colour remain in protected places. Not the bright blues and golds that once covered every surface, but hints, whispers. A shadow of red ochre in a protected corner. A ghost of Egyptian blue, that first synthetic pigment that the ancient chemists created from copper and calcium and silica, heated precisely, ground carefully. A touch of yellow from iron oxide. These colours were made from the land itself, minerals ground and mixed with gum arabic from acacia trees. The hall is cool even though the desert beyond is beginning to warm. The massive stones hold the cold of night well into morning, creating their own climate. This was intentional. The architects understood thermal mass, understood how stone could moderate temperature. This hall was designed to be comfortable when the outside world blazed. As the first light begins to enter, it comes in narrow shafts through the clear story windows, beams of gold in the dusty air. These light shafts were calculated, designed to illuminate specific reliefs at specific times. On certain days, at certain hours, particular images would blaze with light, while all around remained in shadow. The priest who designed this understood drama, understood how to make stone and light work together to create experiences. The floor beneath your feet is worn smooth by millions of footsteps. Priests and pilgrims, conquerors and tourists, all have walked these same stones. In places, you can see depressions where people have stood repeatedly, perhaps where priests stood for daily rituals, perhaps where guards kept watch. The floor is a map of human behaviour, written in worn stone. You leave the temple as the sun rises, drawn to a quieter scene nearby. In a small courtyard, sheltered from the wind, you find an old man practicing the ancient art of the scribe. He's not ancient himself, perhaps 60, but he carries the tradition that stretches back 5,000 years. His tools are simple, reed pens cut from the plants that grow along the Nile's edge, a palette of inks, lamp black made from burned oil, red ochre from the desert hills, and papyrus, real papyrus, made the old way. You watch as he prepares a new sheet. The papyrus has already been made, strips of the plant's pith laid crosswise, pressed, dried in the sun, but it needs preparation before writing. He burnishes it with a smooth stone, not heavily, just enough to close the fibres, to create a surface that will accept ink without bleeding. He rules the sheet with a straight edge and a dry reed, creating invisible guidelines that he can feel, but that won't show in the final work. This is muscle memory, decades of practice in his hands. The lines are perfectly parallel, perfectly spaced. though he barely seems to look. He prepares his reed pen, cutting the tip at just the right angle with a small knife. The cut must be precise. Too sharp and the pen will scratch. Too dull and the lines will be thick and ungraceful. He tests it on a scrap, adjusts the angle slightly, tests again. Only when satisfied does he begin. The hieroglyphs flow from his pen like water. He's copying a text from the Book of the Dead, those spells and instructions meant to guide souls through the afterlife. Each symbol is a small artwork, a bird, an eye, a geometric shape. But they're also letters, words, sentences. This double nature of hieroglyphic writing, both picture and phoneme, requires a special kind of thinking, a balance between the artistic and the linguistic. His hand is steady, unhurried. There's no deadline here, no rush. Each stroke is deliberate, considered. When he makes a small error, he doesn't curse or crumple the papyrus. He has a small knife for scraping, removing the mistaken ink without damaging the surface. Patience is part of the craft. The black ink is for the main text, but certain words require red. The names of gods, the beginnings of spells, certain important concepts. He switches between ink smoothly, cleaning the pen each time with a small cloth. The red ochre requires different handling than the lampblack, being mineral rather than carbon. It flows differently, dries differently. As he works, he occasionally burnishes a completed section with the smooth stone, setting the ink into the fibres, giving it a subtle sheen. This will help preserve the text, make it resistant to moisture and handling. These techniques were perfected millennia ago and haven't needed improvement since. You notice he's not just copying but understanding. His lips move slightly as he writes, reading the ancient words. This is not mere transcription but a form of meditation, a connection across time with the scribes who first wrote these words, who first developed this system of writing that could capture sound and meaning and beauty all at once. The workshop smells of ink and papyrus, but also of the frankincense he burns in a small brazier. This too is traditional. The smoke is meant to purify the space, to make the act of writing sacred. The ancient scribes were priests as well as writers, and writing itself was a holy act. You leave the scribe to his work and find yourself in another workshop, this one filled with stone dust and patient hands. An alabaster worker sits cross-legged on a cushion, a partially completed bowl held between his knees. The alabaster is Egyptian alabaster, actually a form of calcite, translucent and warm-coloured, with veins of honey and cream running through it. This stone has been prized since pre-dynastic times, used for vessels that held precious oils and unguents. His tools are simple, copper chisels, though the ancients would have used harder bronze once they learned its secret. Files and rasps, sandstone for grinding, and water, always water, to cool the stone, to carry away dust, to reveal the translucence hiding within the raw rock. He's hollowing the bowl from a solid piece, working from the inside out. This is the traditional way, the hard way, but it produces vessels of incredible thinness and beauty. He uses a bow drill, its string wrapped around a copper bit, drawing the bow back and forth in a rhythm as old as civilization. The bit grinds rather than cuts, wearing away the stone grain by grain. The dust that rises is white as flour, and he pauses frequently to brush it away with a soft brush made from palm fibres. The dust is saved, nothing wasted. It will be mixed with water to make a paste for final polishing, or mixed with oils for cosmetics, or used in a dozen other ways. In this land where resources are precious, everything has a use. As the bowl deepens, he switches to smaller bits, then to hand tools, copper scrapers that he draws across the interior surface. The work requires constant checking of thickness. He holds the bowl up to the light, looking for thin spots that glow brighter, thick spots that remain opaque. The goal is uniform translucence, a bowl that seems to capture and hold light. When the interior is complete, he begins the exterior, first rough shaping with chisels, then refining with files. The alabaster is soft enough to work easily, but hard enough to take fine detail. He creates a simple rim, slightly flared, and a foot ring for stability. No decoration beyond the stone's natural veining, which is decoration enough. The polishing takes as long as the shaping, first with rough sandstone, then finer grades, then leather with powdered alabaster dust, and finally with just his palms, the oils from his skin giving the final luster. He works water into the surface, then polishes it away, repeating until the stone glows as if lit from within. The finished bowl is a simple thing, but perfect in its simplicity. It weighs almost nothing despite being stone. When you hold it to the light, it glows like captured honey. When you run your fingers over it, it's smooth as water. This is the same kind of vessel that held Cleopatra's cosmetics, that was buried with pharaohs, that has been made in this same way for 5,000 years. In the Islamic quarter of Cairo, you find another ancient craft still practiced with patient hands. The Kayamia workshop is bright with colour. Bolts of cotton cloth in every shade imaginable line the walls. On low tables, craftsmen sit cross-legged, working on what will become elaborate tent panels, the kind that once sheltered travellers on the pilgrimage to Mecca. The work is appliqué, building images from cut cloth sewn onto a background. The craftsman you watch has laid out his design, a complex geometric pattern that will become a tree of life when complete. He has no drawn pattern, carrying the design in his head, built from years of practice and tradition. He cuts the cloth with sharp scissors, not measuring, just knowing from experience how large each piece should be. The edges are turned under with his thumb, creating clean lines. Each piece is pinned in place, then sewn with tiny, nearly invisible stitches. The thread matches the cloth so perfectly it disappears. The rhythm of the work is hypnotic. Cut, fold, pin, stitch. Cut, fold, pin, stitch. His hands move with economy, no wasted motion. When he needs to flatten a seam, he uses his palm, pressing down with just enough force. When he needs to ease fullness around a curve, his fingers gather and distribute the excess fabric so smoothly, it seems to happen by itself. The pattern builds slowly. First the trunk of the tree, dark brown cotton that has been tea-dyed to get just the right shade. Then branches, lighter brown. Then leaves, dozens of them, each one cut freehand but matching its fellows perfectly. Green leaves, but not just one green. Spring green and forest green and sage green, creating depth and movement. Between the leaves, he adds flowers, red and yellow and orange, colours that sing against the green. Each flower is made of multiple pieces, petals overlapping, centres contrasting. The work requires planning several steps ahead, knowing which pieces must go down first, which can be added later. The background fabric is indigo, deep as the night sky. Against this darkness, the tree seems to glow. This is intentional, traditional. These tent panels were meant to be seen by lamplight, to create interior spaces that felt like gardens, like paradise, even in the middle of the desert. As he works, he occasionally holds the piece up, checking the overall composition. Small adjustments are made. A leaf moves slightly, a flower added where the pattern feels empty. This is not mechanical reproduction, but art. Each piece unique, despite following traditional patterns. The finished panel is both bold and subtle. From a distance you see the tree, strong and clear. Up close you see the thousands of stitches, the tiny decisions, the places where the craftsman chose to vary from strict tradition, to add his own touch. You find yourself in an old madrasa, a place of learning attached to a mosque, where other forms of art preserve different kinds of knowledge. The courtyard is a geometry lesson written in stone and tile and light. The patterns that cover the walls are not random but mathematical, based on principles discovered by Islamic mathematicians 1,000 years ago. Circles and polygons intersect and overlap, creating patterns that could continue infinitely, that have no beginning and no end. A calligrapher works in a corner of the courtyard, copying verses from the Quran onto parchment. His script is Thuluth, one of the classical styles where the letters flow like water, like wind, like thought itself. The Arabic alphabet becomes art in his hands, each letter perfectly proportioned, perfectly placed. He uses a reed pen, not unlike the scribes, but cut differently, creating the thick and thin lines that give Arabic calligraphy its distinctive beauty. His ink is special, made from lamp-blackened gum Arabic, but also containing crushed pearls, giving it a subtle shimmer. For certain words, the names of God, he uses gold leaf, applying it with a brush so fine it seems to be a single hair. The work requires absolute concentration. One misplaced dot, one incorrectly proportioned letter, and the whole page must be begun again. This is not just writing, but worship, each letter an act of devotion. He works in complete silence, his breathing controlled, his hands steady as stone. Above him, the mashrabiyah screens filter the light into patterns that move across his work as the sun travels. These wooden screens are artworks themselves, turned on lathes, fitted together without nails or glue, held by the perfection of their joinery alone. They create privacy while allowing air to flow, light to enter, beauty to exist. The shadows through the screens create a secondary calligraphy on the floor, words made of light and darkness that shift and change through the day. This too was intentional. The architects who designed these spaces understood that shadow could be as important as substance, that negative space could carry as much meaning as positive. In another corner of the madrasa, a woodworker is creating a small box, the kind used to store Qurans or other precious texts. The wood is Lebanese cedar, imported at great cost, chosen for its beauty and its scent and its resistance to insects. He's inlaying it with mother of pearl and brass, creating a pattern of stars and polygons that echoes the tilework on the walls. Each piece of inlay must be cut precisely, filed to fit perfectly. The brass is cut with a tiny saw, its blade so fine it's nearly invisible. The mother of pearl is even more delicate, prone to splitting along its natural layers. He works with infinite patience, fitting each piece, checking, adjusting, fitting again. The pieces are held in place with fish glue, applied warm, setting as it cools. Once all the inlay is in place, he'll sand the surface smooth, using progressively finer grades until the wood and inlay form a single perfect plane. Then oil, rubbed in by hand, coat after coat, until the wood glows with inner light. The brass will be engraved, tiny lines that catch the light, creating texture within the pattern. This is done with a burin, a tool unchanged since ancient times, pushed by hand, controlled by experience. One slip would ruin hours of work, but his hand never wavers. Near the Nile, in a village that has made pottery since before the pharaohs, you watch a potter at his wheel. The wheel is kicked, powered by his foot in a rhythm that becomes automatic, freeing his hands to work the clay. The clay itself is Nile mud, filtered and refined, mixed with sand to give it structure, aged in pits until it reaches the perfect consistency. He centres the lump of clay with practiced movements, his palms pressing from opposite sides until it runs true. This is the hardest part for beginners, but second nature to him. The clay must be perfectly centred, or the pot will be uneven, will wobble, will collapse. Once centred, he opens the clay with his thumb, pressing down while supporting the walls with his other hand. The hole widens, deepens, becomes the interior of what will be a water jar. His hands are wet, constantly dipping in a bowl beside him, keeping the clay moist, workable. He pulls up the walls, one hand inside, one outside, lifting the clay in a smooth motion. Each pull thins the walls, makes the vessel taller. He knows by feel when the thickness is right, when the proportions are correct. This is knowledge in his hands, not his head. The rim is formed with special care, his fingers creating a smooth, rounded edge that will be comfortable to drink from, strong enough not to chip easily. A slight flare at the lip, traditional, functional, beautiful. When the pot is complete, he cuts it from the wheel with a wire, sliding it onto a board to dry. It will dry slowly in the shade, then be fired in a kiln that has been used for generations, fed with palm fronds and cotton stalks, agricultural waste turned to useful purpose. Some pots he decorates while still wet, using simple tools to create patterns. Parallel lines made with a comb, impressions from stamps carved from clay or wood. These decorations are traditional, patterns that have been used for millennia. that mark these pots as Egyptian as surely as hieroglyphs would. In the Coptic quarter, you find other traditions, Christian traditions that are among the oldest in the world. An icon painter works in a monastery workshop, creating an image of the Virgin and Child in the Coptic style. This is not realistic painting, but symbolic, each element carrying meaning beyond its appearance. The large eyes that see all, the small mouth that speaks only truth, the hands positioned in blessing. He works in egg tempera, pigments mixed with egg yolk, a medium that requires speed and certainty. Each area must be painted while wet, colours blended on the panel rather than on a palette. The gold leaf background is already in place, burnished to a mirror shine, representing the divine light that surrounds all holy things. The pigments are ground by hand, some imported, some local. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan for the Virgin's robe, malachite from Sinai for greens, red and yellow ochres from the desert. Each colour has symbolic meaning. Blue for heaven, red for divine life, white for purity, black for mystery. He paints in layers, building up from dark to light, a technique unchanged since Byzantine times. The faces are last, requiring the most skill. The features are stylized but must convey emotion, humanity within divinity. This is the hardest part, making the divine seem approachable, the human seem holy. Throughout all these workshops, these places of making, you sense a common thread. These craftspeople are not just preserving techniques, but continuing conversations. Conversations with the materials, understanding their nature, working with rather than against them. Conversations with tradition, respecting what came before while adding their own voice. Conversations with the future, creating objects that will outlast them, that will carry these traditions forward. There's a meditative quality to all these crafts. The repetitive motions that free the mind while occupying the hands. The deep concentration that becomes a form of prayer. The satisfaction of creating something beautiful and functional from raw materials. These traditions survive not through museums or books, but through hands teaching hands. Masters working beside apprentices, showing rather than telling, correcting through example rather than words. This is how knowledge has been transmitted here for millennia, one generation to the next, an unbroken chain stretching back to the beginning of civilization. You notice how each craft is adapted to its environment. The shallow relief carvings that don't trap sand. The mashrabiyah screens that provide shade while allowing air movement. The pottery glazes that keep water cool through evaporation. These are not arbitrary aesthetic choices, but responses to climate, to available materials, to the demands of life in this place. The colours used in all these crafts echo the colours of the land, the ochres and umbers of the desert, the blue of the Nile and the sky, the green of cultivation, the gold of sand and sun. Even imported materials are chosen to harmonise with this palette, creating a visual coherence that makes Egyptian art instantly recognisable. Time moves differently in these workshops. There are no clocks, no schedules. Work continues until the light fails or the task is complete. Prayers divide the day, not hours. This is time as it was measured before mechanical clocks, time measured by the body's rhythms, by the sun's movement, by the natural flow of work and rest. This silence in these spaces is not empty but full of concentration, of breath, of the small sounds of making, the whisper of brush on papyrus, the soft grinding of stone on stone, the whistle of thread through fabric. These sounds create their own music, a quiet symphony of creation. You realise that these crafts are not separate from daily life but woven into it. The potter makes jars for water and oil. The weaver creates cloth for clothing and shelter. The calligrapher preserves sacred texts. The icon painter provides images for contemplation and prayer. Art here is not separate from function, but united with it. Beauty and utility in balance. The tools used are mostly simple, mostly ancient. Reeds and stones and copper and wood. The complexity is not in the tools, but in the knowledge of how to use them. Knowledge that takes years to acquire, lifetimes to master. These craftspeople are libraries of technique, carrying information that exists nowhere else. that can't be written down but must be experienced, embodied. As evening comes to these workshops, as craftspeople set aside their tools, clean their spaces, prepare for rest, you sense the continuity of it all. Tomorrow they will return, take up their tools again, continue works in progress, begin new ones. This has been happening for thousands of years and will continue happening, God's willing, for thousands more. The objects they create will outlive them. The papyrus text will be read by scholars not yet born. The pottery will be discovered by archaeologists of the future. The textiles will be preserved in museums that don't yet exist. But more importantly, the traditions will continue, passed to new hands, adapted to new times while preserving their essential nature. This is the quiet, cultural heart of Egypt. Not the grand monuments, though those too are important, but these small acts of creation, these daily practices of beauty and function. This is civilization at its most fundamental. Humans taking the raw materials of the earth and transforming them into objects of use and meaning and beauty. The knowledge preserved here is different from the knowledge in books. It's knowledge that lives in hands and eyes, in muscle memory and spatial understanding. It's knowledge that can only be passed person to person, hand to hand, a chain of teaching and learning that connects the present directly to the deep past. As night falls fully, these workshops close, these craftspeople return to their homes, but what they've created remains. The stone carved today will last millennia. The words written will be read by countless eyes. The patterns woven will shelter and comfort. The pottery thrown will carry water to thirsting mouths. This is the true wealth of Egypt, not gold or monuments, but this continuous tradition of making, this conversation between human creativity and the materials of the earth, this patient accumulation of beauty and knowledge, one careful gesture at a time. As the craftspeople set aside their ancient tools and close their workshops for the night, the broader rhythm of Egyptian life continues its eternal cycle. Dawn will come, as it always has, and with it the quiet choreography of daily existence that has changed in its details but not in its essence since the first farmers settled along the Nile's banks. You find yourself in the pre-dawn darkness of a neighbourhood in Old Cairo, where the first stirrings of the day begin while stars still shine overhead. The baker is always first. His shop is a small cave of warmth in the cool morning. The oven's already hot from fires lit an hour ago. The heat radiates from the brick walls, from the iron surfaces where bread will soon bake. He moves through his space with the confidence of someone who could work blindfolded, each tool exactly where his hand expects it to be. The dough has been rising through the night, covered with damp cloths, swelling with patient life. He uncovers it now, and the scent of fermentation fills the air, yeasty and warm and as old as civilization itself. This is baladi bread, the bread of the country, made the same way for generations uncounted. He divides the dough with practiced movements, not weighing but knowing by feel when each portion is right. His hands shape each piece into a disc, pressing and stretching, creating the flat rounds that will puff in the oven's heat. Some he scores with simple patterns, parallel lines or crosshatches, marks that are both decorative and functional, allowing steam to escape, controlling how the bread will rise. The shaped loaves rest on wooden paddles worn smooth by use. When ready, he slides them onto the hot surface of the oven with a movement like a dancer's, smooth and certain. The bread begins to puff immediately, the moisture in the dough turning to steam, creating pockets that will make the bread light despite its lack of added fat. The smell of baking bread begins to drift through the neighbourhood, a gentle wake-up call more effective than any alarm. It seeps through shuttered windows, under doors, drawing people from sleep with its promise of warmth and sustenance. As each batch finishes, he lifts the loaves with his long paddle, stacking them in baskets lined with cloth. They cool just enough to handle, still warm, still soft, the crust crackling faintly as it contracts. Soon neighbours will arrive with coins wrapped in small cloths, taking their daily bread home wrapped in paper that will be saved and reused until it falls apart. The baker works steadily but without rush, There's a rhythm to it, a cycle of shaping, baking, cooling, beginning again. His movements are economical, nothing wasted. When he wipes sweat from his forehead, it's with a cloth kept specifically for that purpose. When he needs more flour, he takes exactly what's needed, no more. As the sky begins to lighten, turning from black to the deepest blue, the market begins to wake. The souk at this hour is a different place than it will be later. Quiet, almost meditative. Vendors arrive with their goods, setting up their displays with the care of artists arranging exhibitions. Each has their spot, their regular customers, their particular way of displaying their wares. The date seller arranges his fruits by type and quality. The amber translucent dates from Siwa, the almost black dates from Aswan, the fresh yellow dates still on their branches. He builds pyramids of them, architectural constructions that display the goods while keeping them stable. Between the pyramids, he places small samples on plates, an invitation to taste. Next to him, the spice vendor creates landscapes of colour and scent. Mounds of golden turmeric, rust-red paprika, brown cumin, green cardamom. Each spice in its own basket, the surfaces smoothed into perfect cones or pressed flat with wooden paddles. The arrangement is both practical and beautiful, each spice accessible but protected from mixing. Small cones of tea sit in neat rows. Black tea from Ceylon, green tea from China, mint from local gardens dried and crushed. Hibiscus flowers like paper roses. The tea seller has small scales, brass ones that have been in his family for generations, the weights worn smooth but still accurate. A woman arranges herbs in bundles, each tied with strips of palm frond. Coriander with its roots still attached, the earth clinging to them. Parsley so green it seems to glow. Dill with its feathery fronds. Mint with its square stems and serrated leaves. She sprinkles them with water from a plastic bottle, keeping them fresh in the growing heat. The basket weaver has brought his newest work, still smelling of fresh palm fronds. Baskets of every size, from tiny ones that might hold a child's treasures to large ones for carrying market goods. Some are simple, utilitarian. Others show elaborate patterns, the fronds dyed different colours, woven into geometric designs. As the morning progresses, customers begin to arrive. The interactions are quiet, respectful. A greeting, perhaps an inquiry about family, about health, then business, but business conducted as a social exchange rather than mere transaction. The weighing of goods is done with care, transparency. The scales are in full view. The vendor adds weight until the balance is perfect, then adds a little more, the gift that creates relationship rather than mere exchange. Money changes hands discreetly, folded small, passed palm to palm. There's no shouting here, no aggressive selling. Customers know what they want, vendors know what they have. The negotiations, when they happen, are gentle, more like conversations than confrontations. Both parties know the dance, know that the first price is an invitation to dialogue, the final price a consensus. Down at the river, as the sun rises higher, the Fluka sailors prepare for the day's work. These boats have sailed the Nile for millennia, their triangular sails unchanged since pharaonic times. The sailor you watch is perhaps 40, his hands dark and weathered from sun and rope work, his movements unhurried but purposeful. He checks his rigging first, running his hands along the ropes, feeling for frays or weaknesses. The rope is hemp, rough but strong, each strand visible. Where he finds the beginning of wear, he wraps the spot with smaller cord, reinforcing before failure rather than repairing after. The sail needs attention. There's a small tear from yesterday's wind, nothing serious but requiring repair before it becomes serious. He sits cross-legged on the deck, the sail spread before him, a curved needle in his hand. The stitches are small even, each one pulled tight but not too tight. The repair will be stronger than the original fabric. The deck is scrubbed with river water and a brush made from palm fibres. Not because it's dirty, but because this is what you do each morning, maintaining the boat that maintains you. The wood is worn smooth by generations of such cleaning, the grain raised and beautiful. He He coils the spare rope with particular care, each loop exactly the same size, the coil flat and even. This is not mere neatness, but practicality. A properly coiled rope can be deployed instantly, won't tangle when needed urgently. But there's beauty in it too, the spiral of the coil, the pattern of the twisted strands. The tiller, polished by countless hands, is checked for smooth movement. A drop of oil where wood meets metal, worked in with a cloth. The rudder's response tested with gentle pressure. Everything must work perfectly but without force, responding to the lightest touch. When ready to sail, he waits for the right wind. Not just any wind, but the wind that will take him where he needs to go with minimum effort. He reads the river's surface, the bend of the reeds, the direction of clouds. This knowledge isn't from books, but from years of observation, patterns recognized without conscious thought. The sail is raised slowly, the rope running through his hands with control. The triangle of cloth fills with wind, the boat beginning to move with that particular motion of river sailing, gentle, rocking, alive. His hand on the tiller is relaxed, making small adjustments, feeling the boat's response through the wood. Along the riverbank, a fisherman tends to his nets. He sits in shade, thrown by a leaning palm, the net spread before him like a map of his working life. Each hole tells a story, where a fish too large fought free, where rocks wore through the fibres, where time itself has weakened the structure. His tools are simple, a shuttle wound with cord for repairs, a knife for cutting away irreparable sections, spare floats carved from some light wood, painted white to be visible in the water, lead weights, small cylinders with holes through their centres. He works systematically, starting at one edge, examining each section. Where he finds damage, he repairs it with a series of knots that recreate the net's pattern. The knots must be exact, the spacing precise, or the net won't hang properly in the water, won't catch fish efficiently. The floats must be checked too. Some have cracked, water seeping in, making them less buoyant. These he replaces, threading them onto the rope that edges the net, spacing them evenly. The weights on the bottom edge are counted, making sure none have been lost. The balance between float and weight is crucial, determining how the net sits in the water. Beside him sits his morning meal. A round of bread from the baker, still faintly warm. A handful of dates, their sweetness concentrated by the sun. A plastic bottle of water, the outside beaded with condensation. He eats slowly between repairs, his hands washed in river water, dried on a cloth he keeps for that purpose. His sandals sit beside him on the warm stone, placed precisely parallel. His feet are bare, toes occasionally gripping the ground as he shifts position. There's a calmness to his work, no urgency. The fish will be there tomorrow, next week, next year. The river provides in its own time. In an oasis far from the river, the date harvest continues as it has for thousands of years. The climber prepares carefully. The palm trees are tall, some 50 feet or more, their trunks scarred by generations of climbers. He wraps a rope around his waist and the trunk, creating a loop that will support him as he climbs. His feet are bare for better grip, his clothing loose for freedom of movement. The climb is rhythmic. Lean back against the rope, move feet up, shift rope higher, repeat. It looks effortless but requires strength and balance. The trunk sways slightly with his weight, alive, responsive. Palm fronds brush against him as he rises, their edges sharp enough to cut if he's careless. At the crown, he sits comfortably in the intersection of fronds, as at home here as on the ground. The date clusters hang heavy, some still green, others showing the amber translucence of ripeness. He knows which are ready by colour, by feel, by the subtle give when pressed gently. He cuts the ripe clusters with a curved knife, letting them drop to helpers below who catch them in stretched cloths. Each cluster weighs several pounds, would bruise if allowed to hit the ground. The communication between climber and catchers is mostly silent, gestures and timing refined by repetition. When several clusters are harvested, he descends, the reverse of his ascent but requiring equal care. The rope burns must be avoided, the rhythm maintained. On the ground, he drinks deeply from a clay jar kept in shade, the water cooled from evaporation through this porous clay. The dates are sorted immediately, the ripest for eating fresh, their flesh soft and intensely sweet. Others for drying, spread on palm mats in the sun. The damaged ones for animal feed, nothing wasted. The sorting is done by experienced hands, each date assessed in a second, placed in the appropriate basket. In a quiet corner of the city, an hour provides respite from the growing heat of the day. The tea house is simple, a few small tables with brass tops, their surfaces etched with geometric patterns worn smooth in places by countless glasses set down over years. Wooden chairs with woven seats, comfortable despite their age. A floor of tiles, some cracked, some replaced, creating an unintentional mosaic. The proprietor moves with unhurried grace between his small preparation area and the tables. The samovar gleams despite its age, brass polished daily until it reflects distorted versions of the room. Steam rises from its top, the water always ready, always the perfect temperature. He prepares mint tea with the care of a ceremony. Fresh mint leaves in the glass, bruised slightly to release their oils. Sugar. More than seems reasonable, but exactly right for this climate, this tradition. The water poured from height, creating foam, mixing the ingredients, cooling slightly to the perfect drinking temperature. The glass is set on a small brass tray, accompanied by a plate of simple cookies, semolina, and sugar, and a hint of orange blossom. The presentation is modest but perfect, each element in its place. A customer sits in the corner, a regular, his spot always reserved, though never formally. He receives his tea with a nod, no need for words after years of the same order. He sits back, the glass warming his hands, the steam carrying the scent of mint to his face. Another customer arrives, greets the first, is welcome to sit. Their conversation is quiet, punctuated by comfortable silences. They've known each other for decades. No need to fill every moment with words. The tea is sipped slowly, made to last, the cookies nibbled between sips. The sounds here are gentle, the clink of glass on brass, the whisper of steam, the rustle of newspaper pages turned slowly, occasional laughter, but soft, contained. This is a place of rest, of pause in the day's activities. At the edge of cultivation, where desert meets green, a sakya wheel turns its ancient rhythm. The water wheel is old, its wood darkened by age and moisture, but still strong, still functional. It's powered by a single ox, walking in an endless circle, patient, unhurried. The animal knows the path so well it needs no guidance, following the worn track without deviation. Clay pots are tied to the wheel's rim, descending empty into the well, rising full, tipping their contents into a channel at the wheel's peak. The rhythm is hypnotic, splash as the pot enters water, creak as it rises, gurgle as it empties, over and over, constant as heartbeat. The water flows through carefully maintained channels, split and split again, reaching every corner of the garden. The channels are lined with hardened mud, repaired where necessary, kept clear of debris. Small gates made of metal or wood direct the flow, opened and closed according to need. The garden is organised in narrow beds, each crop in its place, onions with their vertical green shoots, tomatoes tied to stakes made from reed, peppers in neat rows, herbs along the edges where they can be easily reached for daily cooking. A farmer tends the gates, directing water to beds that need it, closing off those that have had enough. He knows by the colour of leaves, the texture of soil, exactly what each plant needs. This knowledge is inherited, passed from father to son, mother to daughter, refined by each generation. The young shoots are bright green against the pale soil, almost luminous in the strong light. They grow visibly day by day in this climate, the combination of sun and water and fertile soil creating vegetables of intense flavour, concentrated by the desert air. In the workshop quarter, the rhythm of making continues through the heat of the day. A brass worker sits before his bench, placing hair-thin wires of brass into grooves carved in wood. This is inlay work, creating patterns that will catch light, that will turn a simple box or table into art. Each wire must be cut precisely, bent to follow curves, tapped into place with a hammer so small it seems like a toy. The pattern emerges slowly, a star becoming a field of stars, geometric forms interlocking, creating new forms in their negative spaces. The work requires perfect vision, steady hands, infinite patience. One misplaced wire and the pattern is broken, the harmony destroyed. Next door, a leatherworker draws his knife along a straight edge, cutting strips that will become belts, straps, sandals. The leather is local, tanned with acacia pods, soft but strong. He knows exactly how much pressure to use, cutting through in one pass without scoring the board beneath. The edges must be smoothed, sealed. He runs a heated tool along each edge, melting the fibres slightly, creating a finished surface that won't fray. The smell of heated leather fills the workshop, earthy and ancient. Each piece is stamped with simple patterns, geometric forms pressed into the surface with tools that might be centuries old. A potter arranges his morning's work along a wall to dry. Bowls and jars and plates, each one similar but unique. The slight variations that mark handmade work. They must dry slowly, evenly, or they'll crack. He turns each piece occasionally, ensuring uniform drying. The unfired clay is fragile, vulnerable, but contains the potential for permanence. Once fired, these vessels will last centuries, millennia. But for now, they're just mud and water, waiting for the alchemy of fire to transform them. In a family courtyard, the afternoon routine unfolds. The floor has been swept with a broom of palm fronds, the dust settling in corners to be gathered later. Water has been sprinkled to settle the remaining dust, to cool the air slightly. The courtyard smells of water on hot stone, a clean, mineral scent. A woman pours water from a large clay jar into smaller vessels, the sound musical in the enclosed space. The water is cool from evaporation, almost cold despite the heat. She fills a basin for washing, sets out towels worn soft by use. Children return from school, their energy dampened by heat. They wash faces and hands, drink deeply, find spots in the shade. Books are produced, homework begun, in the relatively cool courtyard rather than the warmer rooms inside. An elderly man sits in his usual spot where the shade is deepest, where a faint breeze sometimes stirs. He holds prayer beads, moving them through his fingers in an endless cycle, lips moving slightly in remembered verses. The beads click softly, rhythmically, a sound that has become part of the courtyard's afternoon music. The mashrabiyah screens throw patterned shadows that move as the sun moves, a slow-motion sundial marking the afternoon's progress. The shadows are cooler than the direct light, creating microclimates within the courtyard, each family member knowing exactly where to sit at each hour for maximum comfort. A cat appears, finds a patch of shade, stretches impossibly long, then curls into sleep. It belongs to no one and everyone, fed by the entire neighbourhood, as comfortable here as anywhere. Its presence is part of the rhythm, expected, welcomed. As afternoon wears toward evening, the rhythms begin to slow. The market vendors pack unsold goods carefully. Spices are covered, fruit stored in cool places, bread wrapped for tomorrow. The souk that was busy becomes quiet, merchants heading home for the day's main meal, for rest. The fisherman gathers his mended nets, tests their weight, their balance. Tomorrow he'll rise before dawn, cast them into the river, continue the cycle that has sustained his family for generations. For now, the nets are folded carefully, stored where they'll stay dry. The baker's ovens are finally cooling, though they'll retain heat through the night. He's saved some dough for tomorrow's batch, the continuous culture that links each day's bread to the last, an unbroken chain of fermentation stretching back years, decades. The felucca sailor moors his boat securely, sail furled and covered, ropes coiled and stowed. The boat will rest through the night, moving gently with the river's current, ready for tomorrow's wind. These rhythms of daily life are older than history, newer than yesterday. They're adapted to climate, to culture, to the eternal presence of the river and desert, they create a structure for life that's both constraining and freeing, providing security through repetition, meaning through tradition. You realize that this daily rhythm is what civilization actually is. Not the monuments or museums, but these small repeated acts. Making bread, mending nets, raising water, tending gardens. The accumulation of these simple acts day after day, generation after generation, creates culture, sustains life, builds the foundation on which everything else rests. The dignity in these simple acts is profound. There's no shame in repetition, no loss of meaning through familiarity. Each loaf of bread is both the same and unique. Each prayer is repeated yet new. Each sunrise finds the same people doing the same things, but also different people, changed by yesterday's experiences, anticipating tomorrow's possibilities. As evening approaches, as the heat finally begins to break, as people prepare for the cycle to begin again tomorrow, you understand that you've witnessed something eternal. The details may change, but the essence remains. Humans adapting to their environment, creating beauty in utility, finding meaning in repetition, building life from the simple materials at hand. This is the true life of Egypt, not in the tourist sites or the history books, but in these daily rhythms, these small acts repeated with patience and dignity, these gentle exchanges between people who have known each other all their lives, these quiet moments of rest in courtyards shaded by tradition as much as by walls. The sun sets on another day, unremarkable yet essential, forgotten yet foundational, simple yet profound in its simplicity. As the last merchants close their shutters and the final prayers of afternoon fade into memory, you find yourself drawn to quieter places. Those corners of Egypt where the transition from day to night unfolds with particular grace. The energy of the day is softening now, like cloth worn smooth by gentle handling, and you move through this gentling world with steps that barely disturb the dust. You come to the Nile embankment as the sun begins its final descent. The stone here has been gathering heat all day, and now it releases that warmth slowly, generously. You place your palm on the weathered surface and feel the day's accumulation, not burning but deeply warm, like the memory of fire rather than fire itself. The stone is smooth where countless hands have rested, where generations have come to watch the river change its colours with the changing light. The feluccas are returning now, their sails lowered, their masts standing bare against the sky like calligraphy written in wood. They rock gently at their moorings, the smallest movement, just enough to show they're alive, resting but ready. The ropes that hold them creak softly, a sound like whispered conversation, like old friends talking low. The river itself is undergoing its evening transformation. The gold that blazed across its surface an hour ago is deepening, softening, becoming something more subtle. Bronze, perhaps, or the colour of honey held to the light. In the shadows under the embankment, the water is already purple, already accepting night, while the centre of the river still holds day in its current. You settle onto the warm stone, feeling how it fits your body, how bodies have worn hollows here that welcome you. Your feet dangle above the water, not quite touching, and you can feel the coolness rising from the river, a gentle breath that touches your skin with promise of the cooler hours to come. An old man sits nearby, so still you almost didn't notice him. He's watching the river with eyes that have watched it for 70 years, maybe more. His hands rest on his knees, completely relaxed, and you realise he's not waiting for anything, not expecting anything. He's simply here, present with the river and the evening, needing nothing more. A family passes behind you on the embankment path. Their footsteps are soft, unhurried. A child's voice rises in a question, and the parent's answer is too quiet to hear. Just a murmur that blends with the river sounds. They're heading home, you sense, to evening meals and familiar rooms, to the comfort of routine as day ends. The air here carries moisture from the river, just enough to soften the desert dryness. It touches your face like silk, like the lightest cloth, cooling your skin so gently you barely notice until you realise you're no longer warm. The temperature is perfect now, That brief moment when the heat of day and cool of night achieve perfect balance. Birds are gathering in the trees along the embankment. Sparrows mostly. Common birds made beautiful by the light that turns their brown feathers to copper. They settle with small arguments about position, little flurries of wings and chirps, then stillness. They know exactly when to roost, some internal clock more accurate than any watch. The water changes again as you watch. The honey becomes amber. The amber becomes wine. The far bank is already in shadow, a soft purple line that makes the river seem wider than it is. Details are disappearing into dusk, leaving only shapes, suggestions, the essence of things rather than their specifics. You rise slowly, reluctant to leave but drawn to explore other corners of this transitioning world. A small canal leads away from the river, barely wide enough for 2 boats to pass. You follow its path, the embankment giving way to a dirt track lined with date palms. The palms lean over the water at comfortable angles, their fronds creating a tunnel of green shade that's darkening toward black. Here the world becomes more intimate, more secret. The canal water is absolutely still, a perfect mirror for the sky that's beginning to show the first suggestion of stars. The water has a copper tint, maybe from the reflected light, maybe from minerals, maybe from the imagination that sees what it needs to see in this gentle hour. You find a place where the path widens slightly, where someone has built a simple bench from palm wood, weathered silver grey. Beside it, someone has left a basket, forgotten or deliberately placed, woven from palm fronds in a pattern that speaks of patience and skill. The basket is empty but for a few date pits, evidence of someone's afternoon snack. The air here is different from by the river, stiller, holding the scent of vegetation more closely. You can smell the dates ripening in the palms above, sweet and complex. The mud at the canal's edge adds its own note, not unpleasant, earthy and alive. There's jasmine somewhere nearby, invisible in the growing darkness but announcing itself in waves of perfume when the air stirs. You sit on the bench and feel the day leaving your body, the tensions you didn't know you carried releasing into the wood, into the earth. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of this place, which seems to breathe at a different rate than the busy world. Even your heartbeat seems to slow, finding a pace that belongs to evening, to rest. A water bird, late to roost, flies low over the canal, its wingtips touching the water, sending ripples that catch the last light. The ripples reach the bank where you sit, the smallest of waves lapping at the mud, a sound like whispered secrets, like the canal talking to itself. The temperature continues its gentle decline. What was perfect becomes cool, pleasant, the kind of cool that makes you grateful for the warmth your clothes have retained from the day. You pull your garment closer, not from cold but from comfort, the way you might pull a blanket up even when you're not cold, just for the feeling of being held. The palms above whisper to each other in a breeze too faint to feel at ground level. Their conversation is constant but quiet, a susurration that could be wind, could be water, could be the sound of time itself passing through their fronds. As full darkness approaches, you move on, drawn to one more place of transition. You find yourself in the forecourt of an old mosque, not one of the grand tourist destinations, but a neighbourhood place of prayer, worn smooth by daily use. The courtyard is paved with stones that have been here for centuries, each one slightly different, fitted together like a puzzle solved long ago. The shadows from the mashrabiyah screens have lengthened and softened until they're barely distinguishable from the general dusk. But you can still see their patterns on the stones, geometric forms that seem to pulse gently in the failing light, an optical illusion born of tired eyes and the magic hour. In the centre of the courtyard stands a fountain, not running now but holding water in its basin. The water is perfectly still, becoming a mirror for the deepening sky. The last light seems to concentrate here, the water holding day a few moments longer than the surrounding stone, glowing faintly like captured moonlight. You approach the fountain and see your reflection, shadowy and uncertain, more suggestion than image. The marble edge is smooth and cool under your hands, polished by countless others who have paused here, performed ablutions, or simply rested a moment in their day. Around the courtyard's edges, alcoves provide deeper shadow, darker quiet. In one, you glimpse the shape of someone praying, so still they might be carved from the shadow itself. The whisper of their prayers is below hearing, felt more than heard, a vibration in the air that speaks of devotion, of connection to something eternal. The air in the courtyard is held, protected from wind by the surrounding walls. It has a quality of suspension, as if time moves differently here, or doesn't move at all. You breathe deeply and taste incense from earlier prayers, the faint sweetness of frankincense that clings to the stones, that has seeped into them over years until the courtyard itself has become a kind of censer. The sky above is performing its nightly transformation. The blue that was bright becomes deep, becomes purple, becomes the first suggestion of black. But it's not uniform. Bands of colour stripe the sky, each one a different stage of the night's arrival. Rose gold at the horizon, then amber, then purple, then deep blue, then the darkness where stars are beginning to emerge. You sit on the fountain's edge, feet flat on the worn stones, feeling their warmth through your shoes. The warmth is fading but slowly, held by the mass of stone, released reluctantly. By full dark these stones will be cool, but for now they're still giving their gift of accumulated sun. You leave the mosque as the call to evening prayer begins, the muezzin's voice floating over the neighbourhood like a bird returning to roost. The edge of the city is close here, and you find yourself drawn to where buildings give way to desert, where the constructed world meets the eternal one. You climb a small rise, really just a pile of ancient rubble that has become a hill, worn smooth by wind and feet. From here you can see the desert beginning its nightlife. The dunes that blazed gold at noon are now purple shadows, their crests still holding a line of amber light, the very last of the sun's gift. You watch as this line narrows, rises, disappears, the dunes accepting darkness like a blanket pulled up for sleep. The limestone ridges beyond the dunes still glow faintly, their pale stone holding light longer than the sand. They look like sleeping animals, great patient beasts that have lain down for the night. The wind that shaped them is quiet now, the evening calm that comes to the desert like a benediction. The sand near your feet is still warm and you sit, then lie back, feeling the stored heat through your clothes. The sand shapes itself to your body, supporting you perfectly, understanding your form better than any cushion. You could sleep here, you think, and perhaps people have. Perhaps you will, just for a moment. The sky above is infinite, clear, beginning to show stars that are invisible from the city. First the brightest ones, Venus perhaps, Jupiter, then more and more as your eyes adjust and the sky darkens. The Milky Way will be visible later, that river of light that the ancient Egyptians saw as the Nile of the sky, the source of celestial floods. You hear the desert beginning its night sounds, not silence but small sounds, the tick of cooling sand, the distant call of some night bird, the whisper of the smallest breeze moving grains from one place to another, the patient work of reshaping the landscape that never stops. Your breathing has synchronized with something larger, some rhythm that belongs to the desert night. In and out, slow and deep as if you're breathing with the earth itself. The warmth of the sand is entering your body, the tension of the day leaving, a gentle exchange that leaves you lighter, calmer, ready for rest. You rise eventually, sand falling from your clothes like stardust, and make your way to one final vantage point. A roof terrace overlooks the transition zone where city meets desert meets river. It's a simple space, someone's private retreat made welcoming to you by the universal hospitality of evening. The tiles beneath your feet are still warm, terracotta that's been baking all day, now returning that heat to the cooling air. Someone has left a brass tray here with glasses for tea, abandoned or waiting, it doesn't matter. The brass catches the last light and throws it back transformed, golden and soft. You sit on a low cushion that smells of sun and dust and time, conforming to your body, accepting your weight with grace. From here you can see the horizon in all directions. To the west, where the sun has set, a band of rose gold persists, too stubborn to give way to night just yet. It fades even as you watch, rose becoming blush, becoming the faintest suggestion of colour, then nothing, just the darker sky where day was. To the east night has fully arrived, stars emerging like scattered seeds, like diamonds spilled on dark cloth. The moon hasn't risen yet, but you can feel its approach, a brightening at the horizon that promises silver light to come. Below, the city is lighting its lamps. Not all at once, but gradually, each light a small star terrestrial, creating constellations of human activity. The patterns are beautiful from here. Strings of light following streets, clusters where neighbourhoods gather, dark spaces where gardens and courtyards hold their darkness close. The river is a ribbon of darker dark through the city, visible not by its own light but by the absence of lights along its banks. It moves, though you can't see the movement from here. It carries its burden of silt and history toward the sea, patient and eternal. The air on the terrace is perfect, whatever perfect means in this moment. Not warm, not cool, just present, touching your skin without demanding attention. It carries the last scents of day, cooking fires, jasmine, dust settling, and the first sense of night, moisture rising, stone cooling, that indefinable smell of darkness approaching. You lie back on the cushions and watch the sky complete its transformation. The bands of colour are gone now, replaced by uniform darkness that isn't uniform at all when you really look. There are gradations, subtleties, places where the black is blacker, where stars cluster or avoid each other. A bat flickers past, visible for an instant against the sky, then gone. Then another. They're beginning their night hunt, their ancient dance with insects, their navigation by sound in a world that's gone quiet enough for echolocation to work. Your eyelids are heavy now, the weight of the day settling on them like warm cloth. You don't fight it. This is what evening is for, this gradual surrender to rest. The terrace holds you, the cushions support you, the air blankets you with perfect temperature. Somewhere in the distance, music plays faintly. Not modern music, but something older. Perhaps a knee flute, its reedy voice carrying over the rooftops like the call of some night bird. The notes are spare, with long silences between them, music that understands the value of quiet, that uses silence as an instrument. You notice your breathing has slowed even more, each breath deeper and longer than the last. Your body is sinking into the cushions, becoming heavy, becoming part of the terrace, part of the building, part of the earth. This is what the Egyptians call kaif, the perfect peace of evening, the absence of want or need, the presence of complete satisfaction with the moment. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, the same stars the pharaohs watched, the same stars that guided traders across deserts, that told farmers when to plant, that promised navigation to sailors. They're patient, these stars, waiting for you to notice them, to remember that you're made of the same stuff, stardust organised temporarily into consciousness, watching itself. The horizon has disappeared now. Earth and sky merged into one darkness punctuated by lights celestial and terrestrial. You can no longer tell where the city lights end and the stars begin. It's all one thing, one vast quiet space where day has ended and night has begun, where you float between waking and sleeping, between consciousness and dreams. This is the gift of Egyptian evening, this gentle transition that doesn't rush, that takes its time, that allows you to shed the day layer by layer like removing garments, until you're left with just yourself, just breath, just the quiet beating of your heart in rhythm with the night. The warmth of the tiles has faded to neutral, neither warm nor cool, the perfect temperature of sleep. The air has stilled to the faintest movement, just enough to remind you you're alive. The sounds have diminished to the essential minimum, a distant dog, a closer cricket, your own breath, your own heart. You're ready now for night, for rest, for the dreams that will come flavoured with dates and river water, coloured with sand and stars. The day is complete, its circle closed, its energy spent and transformed into this perfect peace. Tomorrow the sun will rise again, the baker will light his ovens, the muezzin will call the faithful to prayer. But for now, in this quiet corner at twilight's end, there is only rest, only peace, only the gentle embrace of Egyptian night welcoming you to sleep. The stars continue their wheel, the river continues its flow, the desert continues its patient existence, and you, held by cushions and darkness and the accumulated warmth of the day, let go of the last thread of waking thought and drift into the dreams that wait like old friends, ready to carry you through the night toward another dawn. The night has deepened now, and you find yourself in a simple room somewhere in this ancient land, a room that could be anywhere along the river, anywhere near the desert's edge, anywhere in this timeless place. The walls are pale limestone, cool and solid, and they hold the memory of the day's warmth without giving off heat, creating a temperature that asks nothing of your body, that lets you simply be. Through the single window left open to the night, you can see stars scattered across the darkness like seeds across dark soil, so many stars that the sky seems more light than dark. The air that drifts through the window carries the faint scent of the desert, clean and mineral, mixed with the softer smell of date palms and the distant presence of river water. You're lying on a simple bed, clean cotton beneath you, woven so many times it's become soft as silk, smooth as water. A light blanket covers you, just enough weight to remind you that you're held, that you're safe, that you're exactly where you need to be. Beneath the bed you can sense the solidity of reed mat or timber, and below that the earth itself, ancient and patient, supporting everything. Your head rests on a pillow that smells faintly of sun and cotton and thyme, and it cradles you perfectly, asking your neck to release, to let go, to trust. The night outside is not silent, but filled with the quietest sounds. Sounds so soft they're almost imagined. The whisper of air moving through date fronds, a sound like distant water, like breath, like the earth itself breathing in its sleep. Somewhere far away, a dog offers a single bark to the night. Then silence returns, deeper than before. The desert beyond the village, beyond the green strip of cultivation, breathes its own breath, cool air sinking, warm air rising, the slow circulation of night. The river moves past in darkness, patient and eternal, carrying the same water it has always carried toward the same sea. Through the window you can see the Milky Way now, that great river of stars that arcs across the sky from horizon to horizon. It's so bright here, so clear in this dry air, that you can see its texture, its depth, the way some parts are denser than others, the way it seems to flow like its earthly counterpart below. The ancient Egyptians saw this and knew it as the celestial Nile, the source of all water, all life, all creation. You see it now and understand why they thought this, why the pattern of heaven and earth seemed to them the same pattern, the same truth written in different scripts. Your body is heavy now, sinking into the bed, and you can let it sink further, let it become as heavy as stone, as relaxed as water. Your jaw can soften, all the muscles there releasing, your teeth parting slightly, your tongue resting soft in your mouth like a sleeper in a bed. Your eyes are already closed, but the small muscles around them can soften too, the tiny tensions that you didn't know were there melting away like morning dew in the sun. Your eyelids are heavy, so heavy, resting gently on your eyes like cool cloth, like the softest touch. Your neck can let go now, all those muscles that have held your head upright all day releasing their duty, trusting the pillow to do their work. The back of your neck softens, lengthens, settles. Your shoulders drop away from your ears, falling toward the bed, spreading wide, releasing burdens you didn't know you carried. All the weight you've held in your shoulders can drain away now, flowing down through your arms, through your hands, through your fingers, into the bed, into the earth. There's nothing you need to hold anymore, nothing to carry, nothing to grasp. Your arms are heavy along your sides or folded across your body, wherever they've come to rest, and they can rest there completely, fully, without the slightest effort. Your hands are open or curled, it doesn't matter, but either way they're soft, relaxed, empty of tension, empty of purpose. Your fingers lie still, and you can feel the very tips of them. The smallest pulse is there, your heartbeat travelling even to these furthest points, reminding you that you're alive, that you're safe, that you're held by this night. Each finger is heavy, each one sinking into whatever it touches, becoming part of the bed, part of the room, part of this peaceful night. Your chest rises and falls with your breathing, and you notice now how easy this breathing has become, how effortless, how your body knows exactly what to do without any help from your waking mind. The air flows in, cool and clean, filling your lungs with the night air of Egypt, air that has travelled across deserts and over rivers, air that has touched ancient stones and living palms. The air flows out again, carrying with it any remaining tension, any last threads of waking thought, any unnecessary energy. In and out, as steady and reliable as the Nile's flow, as patient as the desert's waiting. Your abdomen softens with each breath, rising gently as air enters, falling as air leaves, a rhythm as old as life itself, as natural as waves on a shore. Your back can release into the bed now, all along its length, from your shoulders to your waist, feeling the support beneath you, trusting it completely. The bed holds you the way the earth holds the Nile, the way the desert holds the oases, completely and without effort, without question. Your lower back, which works so hard during the day, can let go now, can spread, can rest. Your hips are heavy, sinking into the mattress, and your legs have become so relaxed they seem to belong to someone else, someone who is already deeply asleep. Your thighs are heavy, all those strong muscles that carry you through the world now completely at rest, soft, warm, peaceful. Your knees are easy, neither locked nor bent, but simply resting in whatever position feels natural, comfortable, right. Your calves are relaxed, those muscles that work with every step now completely still, completely quiet, dreaming perhaps of walking through cool temple halls, along river paths, through gardens of palms. Your ankles are loose, your feet are heavy, and the very soles of your feet have released their grip on the world, have let go of the earth they walked on all day. Your toes are soft, each one relaxed, each one at peace. From the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, you're heavy, you're relaxed, you're sinking into sleep the way sand sinks through an hourglass, steadily, inevitably, grain by grain. Your whole body has become part of this bed, this room, this ancient land, resting the way stones rest, the way the desert rests, the way the river rests in its bed even as it flows. The night outside continues its quiet existence, the stars wheeling in their ancient paths, so slowly you could watch for a lifetime and not see them move, yet they move, patient and eternal. The air continues to drift through the window, bringing the coolness that gathers on stone, the sweetness that rises from date palms, the clean mineral breath of the desert. This air touches your face like the softest cloth, like a blessing, like a lullaby made tangible. You breathe it in and it becomes part of you, and you breathe out and become part of the night. Somewhere in this peaceful darkness, a night bird calls, a sound so soft and far away it might be imagined, might be remembered, might be part of a dream that's already beginning. The sound fades, or perhaps you fade, sinking deeper into the bed, deeper into the quiet, deeper into a darkness that's soft and safe and infinitely welcoming. Your thoughts, if you have thoughts any more, are slow and scattered, like leaves floating on the Nile surface, drifting, turning, moving toward the sea and sleep. The boundary between waking and sleeping has become so thin now that you can't tell which side you're on, and it doesn't matter, because both sides are peaceful, both sides are safe, both sides are held by this Egyptian night. You're floating in that space between, that gentle twilight of consciousness where the world becomes soft and distant, and dreams begin to whisper at the edges of awareness. The stars above, the earth below, the air around you, all of it is holding you, rocking you, carrying you into sleep the way the Nile carries its water to the sea. Your breathing has slowed even more, each breath longer and deeper, and you might forget to breathe in for a moment, then remember, then breathe, then forget again, your body taking over completely, knowing what to do, needing no help from your mind. Your mind itself is quiet now, the endless stream of thoughts reduced to a trickle, then to drops, then to nothing. Just the vast quiet space where sleep lives, where dreams are born, where you can rest completely. The room around you has faded into the darkness, and you're aware only of comfort, of warmth just right, of the softest support beneath you and the lightest cover above. The desert breathes its night breath. The river flows its eternal flow, and you breathe with them, flow with them, become part of this ancient rhythm that has no beginning and no end. Your body is so heavy now it seems to be sinking through the bed, through the floor, into the earth itself, becoming stone, becoming sand, becoming part of Egypt's sleeping body. You're safe here, safer than you've ever been, held by 5,000 years of nights just like this one, held by the accumulated peace of all the people who have ever slept in this land under these stars, breathing this air. Let go now of the last thread that holds you to waking. Let it slip from your fingers like sand, like water, like something you never needed to hold at all. The night will watch over you, the stars will keep their vigil, the desert will stand guard, patient and eternal. You can sleep now, deep and peaceful and complete, the way the land sleeps, the way the river sleeps in its motion, the way the ancient stones sleep in their watching. Sleep is here, all around you, inside you, and you can surrender to it completely, falling into it like falling into the softest arms, the warmest embrace, the deepest peace. The stars turn, the air moves, the night deepens, and you're already gone, already sleeping, already dreaming dreams flavoured with dates and river water, coloured with sand and stars, filled with the peace of Egypt's eternal night. Sleep now, sleep deeply, sleep well, held by this ancient land, blessed by this quiet darkness, carried through the night toward a gentle dawn that will find you rested, renewed, restored. But that dawn is hours away, lifetimes away, and for now there is only this, darkness and stars and breath, and the infinite peace of sleep.